and welcome to the CMR audio project. The CMR is the Institute for Coastal and Marine Research at the Nelson Mandela University. I'm David, or Dave if you prefer, and this episode is with Dr. Lorien Pichegru, who is the acting director of the CMR. We had a few internet connection problems during the interview, and we were cut quite short. It's still a 20-minute interview, and I think it's well worth releasing what I managed to record. Do note that the views and opinions expressed in the CMR audio project interviews are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any branch of the Nelson Mandela University. If you have any questions or comments about anything a year in this episode or other episodes, drop me an email, cmraudioproject@gmail.com. Could you start just by talking a little bit about your background and what brought you to the CMR?
I did a PhD on seabirds on Cape Garnet, by foraging ecology in relation with prey and the impact of fishing. And that was between France, the CNRS, and UCT. And while I was doing my PhD, I secured a postdoc to work on penguins and on the same kind of field. So my specialty was to use biologging on seabirds, so those miniature electronic recorders that we put on predators. And because of that, then I was involved in a unique experiment where we were using a scientific approach to test for the impact of fishing and closing to fishing for African penguins. My work was based in Algoa Bay. So I was still at UCT and a consultant for BirdLife South Africa, but doing all the work in Algoa Bay. Eventually my contract finished, so I had a contract here because it made more sense as a research fellow in the zoology department than also being affiliated to the CMR. That was now a bit more than 6 years ago. So yes, that's how I discovered the CMR, and I've seen Bernie's amazing work, and I really love that the idea of the CMR being so ahead of the time in a way, so very novel in terms of transdisciplinarity and pushing forward the ocean science at a national and continental level.
You've mentioned France. Maybe now's a good time to ask about the French Foreign Ministry. How does that fit into the mix?
Yes, I don't know if it fits, but it's there. I've been in South Africa for 15 years and in PE, the honorary, and I've been in PE for 9 years or so, a bit more. And the honorary consul was retiring. He had enough because it's an honorary position, so it's voluntary. So he was getting a bit old, so he was looking for a replacement. And they needed someone young enough to, so it's 5 years contract, but they didn't want to renew it only once. So he kind of in for a long time. So they wanted someone young enough to do the work for a long time. And I got there because I've always been engaging with the public. This is something that's very close to my heart, to pass on the information as a scientist, but also as a conservationist. I think often the problem in conservation is ignorance of the problems, of the issues, and also not valuing what we have, not understanding the value of biodiversity, basically. So I organized some talks at Bayworld. We had a talk every month, and I was finding a speaker, and we started building quite a nice group of 50 to sometimes we had 200 people. So all on a voluntary base. And because of that network, I grew a network more and more with the local decision makers, with a lot of NGOs and with universities. So the honorary consul thought having a good network is key for this kind of position. So he asked me to become one. Yes, I'm enjoying that very much because it is helping people and it's about putting people together also when they need help, or now with the contact with the French embassy. So the consul work is really a lot of paperwork and helping local French people. But with the contact with the embassy, then there's cooperation work, which I really enjoy. So because of that, then I started working with the municipality on the waste management and how French industry could come and help developing some parallel ways to sort the waste, because we have a massive waste problem in PE, and finding scientists to increase the collaboration with the CMR and on other levels. So the whole philosophy of cooperation I enjoy. So it's putting different cultures together to work together towards something positive.
You mentioned the value of biodiversity. What is the value of biodiversity? Why value biodiversity?
Yes, I've got a nice image that I also use when I talk to kids. So basically, the biodiversity is like a plane. Every single species is a part of the plane, and you need all the species to fly. So if you lose a few screw or a few bolts, it's not a problem. The plane can still carry on. But if you lose more and more, then obviously it falls into pieces. And we are part of the plane. So that's why we need the biodiversity. The ecosystem needs every pieces to function, and that is something we often don't understand. We only see the key species that we need, that we exploit, but it took to lose the bees to realize how important they were, and all these sad animals that we don't think of that are crucial for the ecosystem, and not only for our interest in general.
What got you interested in biodiversity and marine wildlife as a child? And I ask with possibly an ulterior motive in the mix, because I'm curious about the French context. Obviously, in South Africa, we have a very vibrant ecological playing field that children are often lucky enough to grow up in. What was the situation like for you, and what got you interested in it?
So I actually grew up in Reunion Island, and in a very old house, wooden house, very lost in nature. So I grew up quite very much alone with my brother in nature. So that was obvious to, I suppose, to just study biology and carry on to do a career there. And of course, with time, realizing how conservation is important. So I suppose I grew up with that philosophy. But in my career, seeing how we need everyone like me, like with that knowledge, with that understanding to fight for it, to work towards it. So there was no choice in a way.
You are currently the acting director of the Institute for Coastal and Marine Research. Could you tell me a bit about what the role involves at this early stage of the role?
I'm still trying to figure it out. So it's a lot to learn. I must say I'm very grateful to Bernie, because I enjoy the challenges and I'm just learning new things. And that's now more about helping research to happen and putting researchers together more than doing research myself, which I really enjoy. So at this stage, I'm trying to keep it going and help on the administrative side, but keeping in mind that what we need is to grow the collaboration with different departments, different faculties, other universities, and internationally, to grow the footprint of the CMR. And I think what I really enjoy, as I said a bit earlier, is the fact that we're putting people with such different backgrounds together. And that's very key, because that's also why I was engaging with the public and NGOs, and because we often work in silos and people in the blue economy don't understand the biodiversity, but we have to work together. And us as conservationists, we don't understand people that capitalists, and we have to have a conversation. So compromises need to be made, and for that we need to understand the goals of everyone. And in a way, the CMR is putting researchers together in the same philosophy. At this stage, I'm also trying to work on increasing the training capacity within the CMR, because I think that would help securing it within the university. I understand that the continuity of the CMR is not as certain that other faculties, because the funding for the CMR comes from research funding, so we need to secure it over a longer term. I'm also working towards having a unique master's in ocean sciences based at Nelson Mandela University. So that's in collaboration with France under European funding that we would apply in February. But for that, we need to have a cohesion and understanding from all the partners. So that would be across 7 universities and different faculties within Nelson Mandela University. And it's a very exciting opportunity. But for that, we need to, again, understand each other and see how essential a master's like that would be, because you would really train experts in different marine fields that we really need, because as scientists, marine scientists, would struggle to find enough students, to do PhD, to do postdocs. It stops after undergrad. So that's where we're heading and developing the ocean science campus in a unique way, because we really want to be the marine science in the whole of Africa. And that's an exciting goal. Try those big goals.
Yeah, it is exciting. And I think the marine research context is exciting. And I think I've asked Bernie this before, or someone else maybe. why more students don't pursue that line of research after undergraduate and maybe honors. It seems like such a vibrant place to spend time doing research. So maybe I could just draw on some of your own experiences in your own research. You did work on, am I pronouncing this correctly, Persane fishing exclusions. So first question, what are those? And then what were the impacts of those fishing exclusion zones on penguins? Also, how did you collect the data and that kind of thing? I'm interested in the more practical side of that research.
So I was working in Agua Bay on St. Croix Island and Bird Island. So these are two sets of islands. St. Croix is very close to Kucha Harbour and Bird Island is by Wodiga. At some point until recently, the bay I held half of the world's African penguins. So St. Croix was the biggest colony. And so it was a really exciting new design. So what we did is we had one island close to fishing, Persane fishing being small pelagic. So that's your sardines and your anchovies. So we call them Persane because the net is the shape of the purse. So when they see a school, they put down one side of the net and then they circle the school and then they close at the bottom and then so it looks like a purse. And so it's quite sustainable in the sense that there's no bycatch. They usually only get the school of the small pelagic fish. So we had one island close to fishing for 3 years, while the other one, which was close enough to consider the environment being similar in similar conditions. So the only change was the fishing pressure. And we were collecting a whole lot of data. So after 3 years, then the one open to fishing became closed and the one closed became open. And we did it repeated 4 times over 12 years. And we collected a whole bunch of data as much as possible to really try to capture a change. When we designed the experiment, as biologists, we said 3 years is too short because it takes 3 to 5 years for the chicks to start breeding. So if you want to see an impact, you need to close at least 5 years. But of course, there was obviously a lot of politics, so that experiment involved some biologists, but also at the time it was MCM, so Marine Coastal Management. So then it was DEA and DAF, so the fishery and the environment and the government, and also some statistician and the fishing industries, knowing that the statistician was paid by the fishing industries. But so we were supposed to be together around the table talking nicely. It didn't quite happen like that, but we worked very hard to collect the data to see if yes or no, objectively, scientifically speaking, could 20 kilometers really of exclusion help the penguins or not? So we put GPS on penguins to see their foraging efforts. So that would be the amount of energy they put to find their food when they have chicks. So obviously that's directly related to the amount of food available in the environment close by, because when they have a chick, they need to come back to feed it at least once a day. So they're quite limited into how far they can go. So we're putting GPS on the adults. We were measuring the chicks, how much they were growing. That's also an indicator of health, of how much food they were getting. We were getting breeding success, so counting a few nests and see how many of these hatched and got chicks and how many of these chicks fledged. So a whole bunch of information that we could get, the survival of the adults and all that. So it was a huge amount of work because getting information on, I was collecting data on the 2 islands in Agua Bay. So I had to have an army of students to be able to help to collect this data because it's 4 months field work and things that need to be checked every day or every week. And there were some other people working on the west coast around Dasson and Robben Islands. So that was the 2 sets of islands. So that was very nice. I mean, I really enjoyed fieldwork. So that was a privilege to be on those islands. And on St. Croix, we're totally alone. There is no water. There's nothing. So it's pure wild nature. We're really in the penguins' element, and we're very small compared to them. So I really enjoyed that. But 15 years down the line, I'd like to say it's a success story, but it's not really. So we've still been fighting. There were some bias from the beginning. So the person that was supposed to be in charge of the statistics was paid by the fisheries from the beginning. So because of that, he undermined all our results, and it's been a damaging fight, I must say. For personally, I involved myself so much, believed in it so much that it was scarring. And but we keep on fighting. So we're not going to give up. But now we lost a whole lot of penguins because no decision were made. We showed that closing to fishing helped the penguins. I published that in 2010 already, so 11 years ago, quite quickly. It was evident. And we kept on having more evidences. I mean, it takes a while to see what the variability of the environment and all that to have sound science. Takes a lot of data, but we kept on publishing and showing, yes, it's helping the penguins, but still there was always an objection from the government to make the decision to close to fishing. And in the meantime, the penguins kept on going down and down and down and down, and so much so that in the past 4 years, we lost 90% of the colony on St. Croix. So 90% in 4 years, it's really heartbreaking. So yeah, it takes a toll, and well, I mean, on an emotion, basically, on the strength to keep on fighting, but we still do. And now we're working on a press release to inform the public of these unfortunate outcome of the whole experiment. That, you know, despite the science, despite the published science, there is still doubt in the minds of the decision makers of what they should do. Well, I could carry on for a long time on that, so I probably shouldn't. But we secured the meeting with Barbara Creasy on Monday, and we hope that maybe she will hear that she should do something. So of course she will have to take into account the fishing industry. But to this day, the fishing industry hasn't given any proof of the cost of those fishing exclusion on their industry, because they always claim we lose jobs, we lose money, and what are penguins, you know, it's just a bolt in the plane. But penguins are the canary in the coal mine. They are the first one to go, and shortly after, so they became endangered in 2013. 2 years later, we had Cape gannets going endangered. 2 years later, Cape cormorant going endangered because they feed on the same prey. So they are the first one to go, and you know, the next one will be the fishermen themselves, because there will be no fish. But in the meantime, we will have lost a whole bunch of parts of the ecosystem. So
yeah,
yes,
we're losing more than just bolts and screws. We're starting to lose panels off of the plane, people.
Yeah.
Let me jump to a question that then ties directly into this. And I do feel that emotional strain that you've referred to. So it's with a heavy heart that I repeat my somewhat skeptical view that we're going to rise to the challenges ecologically that face us. It's a fairly banal point that endless economic growth can't be sustained while ecology improves. Those two things have clearly worked against each other. So I'm a very much a glass is half empty kind of guy in this regard. Your position seems to echo that, yet you still continue to try and fight the good fight. Can you add anything here? Because I met you at a beach cleanup. You were still taking people out onto a beach, picking up litter. It's a very small scale exercise. The broader backdrop, as I've mentioned, as you've alluded to, is alarming, to say the least. So maybe my question could be summarized as follows. Why bother with these small-scale exercise when the problems are so big, when there's so many conflicts of interest at the highest levels that we need to be objective, not bought? How do you justify continuing?
Yes, I mean, you can't sit there and watch the world falling apart and seeing all species disappearing, mostly out of ignorance and greed. I think it's, you know, when we have that awareness, we have to pass it on and at least try. And I can't see a glass half empty. I almost forbid myself to do that. But, you know, by doing a lot of cleanups and engaging with NGOs and the public, now eventually, thanks to I got to a position where I can talk to, last weekend I talked to the councillor in public health, and we're working towards a better management of the waste in Port Elizabeth. So you don't know where you're going to end up, and the more the more you try, you get to a solution. So yes, it is too small, and yes, we are losing many species, and we will never get what we had even 30 years ago. But there's also 2 points. One is that this capitalist positive growth is way of thinking it's actually very recent, and now we have to keep that in mind. It's not more than, it's not even a generation really. So we can really change it. I don't like to say go back because people don't like that idea, and it's not about that. It's not that the days were better before. It's just we have to keep what we gain in terms of awareness and knowledge, but also go to a sustainable way, which we were doing 60 years ago, let's say, or 70. And that's totally feasible. And that means through awareness, by realizing that capitalism is killing the planet. It's about our own survival. And I really do believe that humans are very resilient. So we will find a solution in a way, to a massive cost to the planet.
That's the end of the episode. Thanks for listening. Any questions or comments can go to cmraudioproject@gmail.com. All episodes of the CMR Audio Project can be downloaded at archive.org. Head over to archive.org and search for CMR Audio Project. You should be on your way. Many thanks to Kendall Beeden, who made the theme music for this audio project. His email address is kendallbeeden@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, as always, may the tides of life treat you kindly.